So this is the Mamiya 645 45mm f2.8 with no speed booster, and here it is with it and without. 80mm 1.9 Mamiya 645 with no 0.8 adapter. This is just the dummy adapter. With it and without. With the adapter and without the adapter. Over the last couple of months, I've been investing more and more in my GFX 102, and I've started rebuilding my Mamiya 645 lens set, starting with the 45 f2.8 and the 80mm 1.9. Now, the fact that I own a GFX 102 made me realize that I had the chance to actually purchase the Kipon 0.8 focal reducer to see how much of a difference it would make with or without this adapter. So in this video, I'm going to show you everything I've learned, showcasing how beautiful the Mamiyas are, using them on my GFX, understanding this adapter, and a bunch of other nerdy cinematography tests. The best way that I can describe a large format look is that it feels like a two-dimensional screen becomes 3D, as if you can reach into the image because how the depth is rendered. There's certainly a sweet spot to see that visual emotion. That's what I like to call it. But once you land it, wow, it is so surreal. I guess in a more practical sense, if you're using a full frame camera in the same position with the same lens, and then you compare that to a large format sensor like the GFX with the speed booster, if you want to get that same field of view, you are moving the camera either further back or closer to the subject, which changes the dimension and the feel and everything else. So this larger sensor allows you to get angles that you wouldn't necessarily get with full frame to have the same feeling, which changes the relationship between the subject and the background. So the 45 now acts as if it's a 36mm at f2, and you would need obviously a 35mm if you wanted to capture the same field of view. But as I've taken the time to learn more about large format filmmaking from the technical side and the story implications, I went back to my photography roots. And with the help of today's sponsor, Skillshare, I was able to learn new techniques. Now, if you haven't heard of Skillshare before, it's the largest online learning community with thousands of classes on different topics such as photography, editing, filmmaking, productivity, and so much more. Now, what I like about Skillshare is that they have world-renowned teachers and creators on their platform. And I was pleasantly surprised to find YouTuber OG Kyle McDougall's class on understanding medium format photography, which helped me better understand how to explain today's topic. This foundation of medium format photography goes hand in hand with digital large format filmmaking when understanding sensor size and film negatives. For instance, 4x5 large format photography is measured in inches. Medium format such as 6x6 and 6x7 negatives is measured in centimeters, and full frame is measured in millimeters. It was nice to also explore other topics outside of film and video. For instance, understanding how to rework my Google Calendar or learning how to start up a business. I stand behind Skillshare's mission to provide extending learning for all walks of life and careers. So if you're interested in learning something new or leveling up your skill, the first 500 people to use my link in the description below or scan the QR code on screen will receive a 1-month free trial of Skillshare. So get started today. If you ever search on YouTube for the Mamiya 645 lenses, you'll find the phrases like the Dark Knight lens or the original RE-DNA lenses, which is all exciting, but that's not why I wanted them. I mentioned this camera test on the channel before, but the camera test from Emmanuel Lubbers pardon me if I butchered your last name, but that test made a lasting impression on me, and it helped me truly see and understand the difference between a large format sensor and a standard full frame or Super 35. Though full frame in the video world is considered large format, but we'll get to that a little later. So in and around our community, there's a common misconception that the Fujifilm GFX sensors are a true medium format when compared to a 645 negative. This is not correct, hence why Fujifilm calls the GFX a large format camera. Even so, the GFX sensor is slightly smaller than a true digital medium format, like the Hasselblad H6D 100C, which is 53 by 40 millimeters. Mind you, the 645 is the smallest medium format camera in the photography world. You still have a 6x6 and a 6x7, which are larger. But when it comes to the video world, things can be confusing for some. Digital sensors that are full frame, which is 36 by 24, and larger are considered large format, essentially anything bigger than Super 35. The GFX sensor is larger at 44 by 25 millimeters in the 4K UHD and GF mode. In comparison, the next largest sensor is the Alexa 65, which is at 54 by 26 millimeters. On top of that, I forgot to mention the Ursa 17K 65 from Blackmagic. That is also a large format sensor in the world of Alexa 65, the GFX Eterna. So make sure to check out CVP's review. It's always phenomenal, a lot of dense information, but worth listening to if you're interested. Anything larger than full frame should be called medium format, up to IMAX. It just makes it more easier to understand. So true medium format lenses like the Mamiya 645 lenses have an image circle of 55 millimeters, which is huge. So this means it will always cover a GFX sensor just fine, with no vignetting. The simplest way to experience a little bit of magic with this combination is to use a pass-through adapter like the Kipon 645 to G-mount adapter. But when you introduce a 0.8 focal reducer, you can achieve a field of view that's closer to what the lens will look like on an Alexa 65, which is the equivalent of 55 by 31 in terms of the sensor size on the GFX, which gives you a slightly larger image than the Alexa 65, which is 54 by 26 millimeters. But now I'm just splitting hairs. You know, obviously it's not truly going to outbeat that camera, but you can get a similar field of view that's slightly wider. But it's still pretty cool to see where image technology has taken us. And this is why I'm so excited for the Eterna, with the ability to film in true open gate on that sensor in video, which is already taller than an Alexa 65, but not as wide. So I wonder what happens when you put a 0.8 focal reducer on a GFX open gate sensor. FBI, open up! When it comes to sourcing vintage lenses, this isn't a walk in the park. There are so many variables to consider, like the amount of research you need to do, the condition of the lens, image consistency, price, and how you adapt it. But don't worry, here are some guidelines that I've learned over the last few years, though I'm not perfect at it, but this has got me on the right track. Starting off, where do I normally buy it? I typically buy my lenses from eBay. Then I normally go to somewhere like MPB or KEH or my local photography store just to shop around. But typically eBay has the better prices. Everywhere else just marks it up way too high for what it is. Secondly, I look for the optical quality. Is the glass mint? I only buy near mint or excellent plus, whatever that is, just because I don't want to deal with the fungus starting out. But if the lens is at a good deal and it has fungus, I will treat it myself. A good practice if you're buying into a family of vintage lenses is try to find the serial numbers as close as possible to each other, so it won't be in any weird variations of color consistency, flaring, and different types of coatings that you might run into. And of course, always read the descriptions if you're buying on eBay. If you can go in person for your local photography store, go in person so you can examine the lenses. My 80mm 1.9 operates very well, with a smooth focus ring and a clean image. So let's talk about a little bit of the form and operation. This here is the 80mm, and as I rack my focus, you can tell that the barrel extends. This is common, obviously, with still lenses. They don't account for, matte boxes and not having mechanical moving parts on the lens. So I normally just run a regular ND filter, which is my Moment ND filter, 2 to 5 stops or 6 to 9 stops, very clean, very neutral. Because I don't really want to put a clamp on matte box, because if you have filters on there, over time that weight is going to wear down the helicoid in this lens. And I want to try to preserve this because one day, I want to rehouse these lenses. Now my 45 is optically perfect too, but the focus ring is stiffer than I expected. Like I said, this one is stiffer, but there's a little bit of telescoping. Not a lot. I really got to fix that. But again, I won't put a clamp on matte box on this unless I have to. I'm always going to just have an ND filter on here. These gears are from Sidmod Lens. I like Sidmod because they just have some really high quality focus gears, but you can buy whatever you want. There's a lot cheaper ones. Tilta has like $2 ones. I want the metal one. I want it a little bit more robust. I keep the apertures clicked. I don't mind them being clicked, and over time, de-clicking apertures tend to slip over time without maintaining them. And then, The focal reducer that I first purchased was the Kipon 0.8 M645 to G-mount for around $800. But the thing that got me worried was how the lens was connected to the adapter. The original 645 mount has, the original mount here for the 645 lens, and it has this little lever here that when you press it, it disengages it, and then there's your optics. This is fine for handheld use, but as soon as you put gears on these lenses and put a motor, you would quickly see that there's a lot of play in this mount. See this play? Watch. See that? I knew that going in. I was willing to sacrifice that and just deal with it, especially when it goes from infinity, when it hits infinity and minimum focus. If you don't have a lens mount secured to this, the whole image will move up and down or shift in some sort of way. So that was one of the drawbacks with this mount. Now, apparently too, this adapter, though it is good, this is the version 1, the flare, it creates a new flare character. So if you'll see sometimes a purple or blue orb, and I've seen a lot of people actually comment about that, how my thoughts on it. And I've noticed it too, but I kind of just glanced over it. So during all this testing, Kipon saw what I was doing, reached out to me and said there was a second version coming. This is going to be a little bit of explaining because it's not as straightforward as putting on this simple one here onto your camera and putting the lens on. This has 2 parts to it because the new adapter, the lock-in adapter for the 645 is a LPL mount. So this is the first piece. This here is just a G mount to LPL mount, and I need this to connect the adapter. Here it is. This is the newer mount. That's beautiful. Wow, look at that. There's the optic there. And then what you do is mount this into the PL mount. That's actually shorter than I thought. That's really nice to see. There's basically the whole new unit, and it is, wow. One thing I love about Kipon, yes, it's expensive, but they make some quality gear, quality adapters. It's either Metabones or Kipon, but Kipon does a lot more interesting speed boosting options, expanders, all of that. Okay, so here are the two adapters. LPL locking to G mount, just G mount to 645 mount. Now I do wish they had a locking foot like on the original one on this one, but it does not. This is much heavier though. It's a lot more metal and glass. Okay, focus, there we go. Let's put this on. Let's get the 80 mil on here. There, and then down. Wow. That is locked in. So just like most things I show on this channel, this is not a cheap adapter. This is truly made for the professionals and professional workflow. This is LPL, so the dummy adapter to the G mount is around just under $500, so kind of standard for a mount of this quality. But the 645.8 reducer to LPL is around, I think, $1,200. So this setup from lens to the proper mount or the more secure mount that you want, you're going to be running, you know, probably a total of just over $2,000, which is pretty much a standard for cinema lenses today though. Somebody had to ask me, why would I choose these lenses over like cinema lenses? And it depends on your taste. I think that's with anything nowadays, what you like in an image. If I need the robust consistency of like cinema lenses like the ROs or the Aureus, you know, for example, I would use those. But if I want a particular look, I'm going to go for vintage optics. It's really just that simple. It's nothing complicated about it in my opinion, but I would always encourage everyone to explore different lenses. You can get some really nice, cheap lenses that have incredible quality as well as character. So yeah, don't skimp out. Don't be afraid. The quality that they provide, it's a softness, it's organicness, that buzzword we like to all throw around, but it keeps the image honest. So we put the 45 on, we're about 8 feet from the subject, and as he walked into the frame and I was recording it, I was like, whoa, this feels different, because as he's walking towards the marker, you felt the foreground, midground, and background, and they all weren't, obviously because it's a wider lens, but they all weren't compressed. It was this, they all breathed, and you can clearly, your eye can clearly go between each of the focal planes when looking through this lens.
Which sounds like an oxymoron, but remember, this is you're viewing a
2D image, yeah,
that looks three-dimensional.
Yes.
This is our job.
It's something that I think we're all kind of chasing. These lenses have it. When we threw it up against, compared to the 40 mil RO and the 35 mil Aureus, they both look nice. It just didn't have that texture that the 45 mil has. It didn't bloom and flare a certain way. You don't need a GFX to experience sort of the large format look. Kipon does make 0.71 focal reducers for full frame, I believe for Sony and for Leica mounts. And that's going to get you close to what the GFX looks like. So make sure to check that out. Kipon has a lot of interesting things. Again, pricey, but worth exploring in my opinion. But yeah, guys, all that being said, what a time to be a filmmaker. Like, we have a lot of interesting tools at our fingertips, and none of these tools will make us necessarily better storytellers, but we get to tell stories in a unique way with the technology that we have today. So yeah, let me know in the comments below if there's anything I missed or misspoke. Please feel free to have a civil discord and kind of correct me here and there. It was a lot to kind of wrap my head around, and I felt like this video was very fast, but at the same time, a lot of information was shared. So leave a comment below. Make sure to check out some of the links below. There's some articles to read and things that, you know, that I was reading when I was putting together this video as well. And yeah, cool. See you guys on the next video, which will be right around the corner.